You have a second?
Second.
Second. Mr. Crowley, can we hear you okay? Can you hear us? Brian? You're on mute, Brian. I don't know if you can hear us.
I don't have any audio.
All right, we'll wait.
You looking for a beating? Housing.
I can hear you.
Can you hear us loud and clear?
Yeah.
Excellent. All right, great. So we have a lot to get through tonight. Oh, let me turn on my mic. We have a lot to get through tonight, but first I wanted to make a few opening remarks. Some folks watched our meeting from last week and they were a bit concerned about a few of my own personal remarks. I referred to comments that I personally heard against the MBTA bylaw that reference the socioeconomic backgrounds of people that may or may not move to our town. And some heard my comments and they were rather upset. They thought that I was calling folks in town who are against the MBTA zoning law racist. Who said anything about race? I didn't. I didn't refer to it, and nor was I thinking about it. Comments made about our future residents that refer to their level of income, how they look and dress, and other such comments, they really bother me. And I'm going to tell you why. So my father, he was a career enlisted Navy man. We moved around a lot, and the Navy didn't pay well. So we used food stamps to pay for groceries. I was made fun of in school regularly for the clothes that I wore, and even for my glasses. They were oversized. We couldn't afford much, so we bought glasses that I could grow into. So when I hear comments that reference wealth and status, yes, I get very frustrated because it's not okay. And even after I made those remarks, and even after meeting and explaining to a group of citizens why I was upset, someone said directly to me that they didn't want more people here. They didn't want more crime, they didn't want more drugs, they didn't want gangs. I don't want those things either. But what makes anyone think that some additional housing units is going to bring a rampant crime to Marshfield? What makes any of us think that it's going to turn the town of Marshfield into Gotham City? Who's moving in that's going to do that? We're not putting in 10,000 units. We're not talking about 10,000 units. So who thinks that we're going to have that kind of situation? That kind of a comment is wrong. It makes no sense. We're an open, inviting community, full of spirit, pride, and we're full of a lot of love. Of course people want to live in our community. Why wouldn't you? Comments like that, they severely dilute many otherwise very good, very strong arguments and well-placed concerns about the impact of the MBTA zoning act in our town. The bylaw concerns me too. It's wrong to make such broad brush statements, and I don't think our town and I don't think the vast majority of people who are against the MBTA bylaw in our town are thinking like that. I don't think that at all. In the same respect, if I implied that everyone thinks the same in my comments last week, then clearly that was wrong and it was misplaced. It's not what I think, and it became an unnecessary distraction. So now, let's get to work. We're going to go ahead.
All set.
We're going to go ahead and start with one of our later articles, correct? We wanted to start with, we have the harbor master here. So let's go ahead and start with, what, 27?
I think it's 27 and 28. 27 and 28.
Twenty-seven.
Also
the harbor master.
Is it
26 and 27.
26, yeah. Yeah, 26, 27, okay. Mr. DeMeo, how are you?
Good evening, thank you for having me, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for being here, sir, appreciate it. So we didn't have much of an opportunity to talk through Article 26 and Article 27. I don't think we spent much time on these either at the Joint Advisory Board, Select Board
Right.
meeting several weeks ago. So we thought it would be advantageous to take a few minutes of your time and try to get a little bit better understanding of what's on here.
I appreciate it. So, these were actually prior articles that we spent some time on, cleaning them up a little bit. It was more like wordiness and language. One of the main things is prior to COVID, the bylaw stated that each year, each person on the morning wait list had to go to town hall April 15th to June 15th. That was like 300 people that we had to send a notification to, 300 people coming to town hall to sign a list for a mooring. Then COVID hit, we had to kind of amend it where I put a PDF list online where people could see their ranking on the wait list. That seemed to work out pretty well since COVID now is lifted. I'm kind of in limbo with the bylaw, not being in compliance with the bylaw because no one's been going to town meeting. It's really archaic to have 300 some people go to town hall to sign a list that we can simply push online and people can notify online or sign up online or see where they view online versus having to come to town hall because not everybody on the wait list lives in town. So it's kind of archaic for people just to drive from the suburbs to sign a list every year just to stay on a wait list that I just feel like it just alleviates the staff in town hall, the clerks in town hall to not have to deal with that. So that's why that bylaw was kind of cleaned up a little bit. If there's any questions on that, be happy to answer.
So the online system, Mike, will be established by you, and it will be online?
Yeah.
So the general public can take a look at that online?
It's already online now under the Harbor Master site. It's on the Excel spreadsheet, but I have to scrub off the addresses and stuff, and I make it to a PDF, so it can't be
Okay.
altered, and that gets posted every year anyway. Also, too, what we did is we created a commercial list, because there was a commercial bylaw that dated back to the 1980s or 90s that stated that the moorings in Green Harbor couldn't go below a certain number of moorings that were commercial-based. No one really knows what that number is, but Green Harbor is a very economical port, as you know, in the state. So what I did is we created a recreational boating list for moorings and a commercial list. That way the commercial fleet never really comes down at all. That way that number kind of stays from what it is. So the fleet's pretty productive here with tuna fish and lobster. So those numbers will never be altered. So I did that as well. So, and also too, we also have all the mooring payments for moorings are online already. It's in our third year, so we're kind of working through that. We're almost at 100% where people get an email for the pay on mooring bill. They can pay online, they can come to the office, pay on the computer, or some folks choose to come in and pay by check right at the office. So we take 3 forms of options for that, and the mooring online would be added to the same system. So also the town is also looking into, we have city hall systems for payments as well for some things like dog license, things like that. The company that we use, it costs us about $3,400 a year to use. And they also do, like, we're looking to get the boat excise tax, everything kind of streamlined in one house with the help of Sean and Meg, obviously, with that portion. But it's just, it's a little duplication of efforts, I feel. So I think we streamline it, we'll save some money along the way for all departments.
More efficient?
That's all.
So the cost of the online system is,
It's about $3,400.
and that's a cost that we're paying right now, or that's?
That's for the online, for the mooring fees.
Okay.
So I would add another section for the online moorings as well. And folks can go there to see where they view, where they're at, et cetera. It just makes it look, it's 2024, it just makes it a little easier for people, that's all.
Okay, so it's $3,400 to,
Roughly that, yeah.
to allow people to be able to do something online that
Well, that's
otherwise
for the
they do.
mooring payment. For the mooring waitlist, we're probably gonna pay a little bit more, but probably not too much more because the infrastructure is already there.
Yeah.
So, but we're also looking to build maybe potentially in the future, the boat excise segment piece as well. That way it's all one-stop shop.
How many applicants do you get a year?
It all depends, about 100 sometimes 50-ish. So so far we had 12 new moorings in Green Harbor after the post dredging. They weren't new moorings, they were moorings that were already there previously, but the harbor wasn't dredged for 10 years, so they kind of sat vacant. So we issued 7 already, so we got 5 more to go. And then we're looking to push out some moorings in the North and South Rivers this winter as well. That's why I've been kind of holding off a little bit to really get this online. It just makes it easier, because right now, some of the folks that are on the wait list have been here since like the 80s. So I have to call their home phone sometimes and wait like a week for them to give me a call back. It's just not fair to call 20 people for 10 mornings and say, oh, sorry, you're too late. So the online thing, through notification, through emails or cell phones will be much quicker.
So
That's all.
it's $3,400 a year or one time?
A year.
A year. And does it free up time from you or your staff?
It frees up everybody's time, frees up the clerk's time at town hall, frees up the residents' time that people have to come here to sign the list. Yeah, it's kind of archaic.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, finish.
I was going to say, so conceivably, just to understand, and I don't know if you can put any number to this, you're spending, I don't want to spend all day on $3,400, I get it. But for $3,400, you're going to also probably be saving just that much in terms of time, which can be spent on other things. It's not that you can shave $3,400 out
Minimal
of
twofold.
labor costs, but,
Twofold, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
for the morning wait list, there's a one-time fee of $50 to get on the list. So there are many towns that charge $5 each year. I don't really want to get into nickel and diming people for $5. I mean, $50 one-time fee is more than sufficient to run the systems and to keep things going. You know, otherwise it's just, you know, you can't have a fee for every little thing. I'm just not for that.
any questions?
My only question on the financial side, is this interface with Munis Financial, the payment system?
So right now, their payment system is an API call that is flowing into Zobro, which is the cash receiving system, which then gets imported into the current Munis software. We're operating across 3 systems currently, and we're phasing those systems out.
Sorry to interrupt for 1 second. Can you hear the audience? Or should they be speaking into a mic?
I would say speaking into a mic would be better.
Okay. We have a mic we can,
Come on up.
just so that way anybody that's listening in or listening to it in the future can.
So to answer your question,
Thank you.
currently, there's an API call, which is an automatic transfer of information from LinksLog, who is the vendor, to our software Zobrio. We're operating across 3 different systems. So right now, Zobrio is actually imported into Munis. So that is how that information is flowing. In the future, it will be a direct API call from LinksLog into Munis.
Okay. When do we see that, all this extended enterprises being phased out?
Tentatively, probably in the next 18 months to 2 years.
Okay, thanks.
It's an integration takes a lot of time, and we don't want to rush it because we want to make sure that it's done
We've
correctly.
had a lot of moving parts on this
Yes,
one and a lot of
there's a
moving
lot
players,
of-
so.
yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks,
That's
Sean.
all I have.
Any other questions on Article 26? Seeing none, move to Article 27. Could you walk us?
Want to vote on that?
Oh, sorry. I was thinking we would hold the votes till the end. Is that okay?
Can we do it now?
We can do it now.
Yeah,
Sure.
why don't we vote?
Or you want to just, then everybody can clear out and we can just
Yeah.
wrap it through it later?
It's fine. We can do it now.
Yeah.
Show 'em. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Brian, we didn't get your vote. Could you say verbally whether you're yes or no?
Yes, aye.
Thank you.
That passes.
All right, so that's 26. 5 yeses. All right, Article 27. You could walk that.
27 is, we've read through this, it's pretty much more just bringing the terminology up to modern terminology.
Just
House cleaning.
cleans up the word in this a little bit, that's all, yeah. The last time the bylaws were actually looked at was a couple years ago. And prior to that, we did a deep dive back in 2008. Other than that, they really haven't been really amended too much.
Has anybody had any pushback on any of this language?
No, this was sent to the Waterways Committee. There was no comments back from the Waterways Committee on this.
No, it's pretty straightforward.
Like I said, there's nothing really glaring here, it just cleans up the current language, that's all.
All right, great, thank you. Go ahead, Nani.
What brought this change up, Mike?
Just being proactive, looking at it, making it sound a little better than what it did, make it look a little more professional.
Great.
Good to be proactive.
Any other questions on Article 27? Seeing none, call a vote. All in favor of Article 27, say aye.
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 All right, we got 5 ayes. Okay. We have anything else for, I think we're good. right?
That's it.
Mike, I think we're good.
We're good on those, that's the last one, I think.
Okay. And I did have two in the capital, and under Article 4, I'm not sure you want to get into those.
Oh, in Article 4.
Sure, let's look at it.
On page 6 and 7.
So the new moat batch, that's, well, it's pretty small.
Yeah.
Okay, and the commercial boom project, what is that?
So last April town meeting, the town was, we were awarded for the North Pier at Green Harbor, $52,000 to complete a new commercial boom for the fishing for offloading and loading. It's partially completed, all the welding and galvanized parts are in place. However, it was very difficult to find people to actually do this kind of work anymore. So we have all the quotes back, and the 63836 is the amount needed to complete all the moving parts, electrical, the motors, hydraulics, and a new standstill ladder to complete it 100%. And I have those quotes as well,
Okay.
right down to the penny. So,
Great. I didn't have any further questions. Any other questions for the harbor master?
No.
Mr. DeMayo, thank you very much. Much appreciate you
Thank you.
coming out to spend a few minutes with us tonight on this
Thank you
wet night.
for your time.
Thank you. All right, so let's go back to Article 1, and we can just go through these in numerical order. Any objections? No? Okay, great. All right, Article 1 is our free cash article. Are there any questions or any comments from anybody on the board in regards to this?
I know this is part of the transition into munis and cleaning up the procedures, and make sure we have 2 and 3-way matches between requisitions, quotes, POs, contracts. I guess, I understand with the transition, you're gonna have this, obviously, might come up as 300 or 400% more than normal in quantity and cost. So after this year, how do you see this next year's?
We've engaged in a lot more training in terms of munis for requisition and invoice entry. So at this particular point, I would say that, so at the end of fiscal '24, I had just started at the end of fiscal '24, so there was a transition period there as well. But at that particular point, I don't feel like most employees felt comfortable with the requisition system in munis. Now, we've established a policy for when a requisition has to be pulled. That's being followed. So in terms of being able to pull the requisitions, everyone, it seems to be pretty good. And there's always training available. My office is now fully staffed. We've been offering that assistance. At the end, as you start to approach the end of the fiscal year, there will be 2 to 3 notifications to departments that starts in May. Keep in mind purchases that you're placing, you have to pull a purchase order because that will carry the funds over to the next fiscal year. So, the notification will go out reminding people you've got to pull purchase orders for everything. People are trained in the requisition system now, so I do think that it will be improved.
So the simple accounting processes, I want to buy a pencil or office supplies, I'm going to put a requisition in, it's going to go to my department head for approval.
Right now, the threshold is 1,000, but once we start to get closer to the end of the fiscal year, it will have to be all purchases.
At the end of the fiscal year, say it again?
At the end of the fiscal year, we'd have to pull a requisition/purchase order for all purchases. That's the only way you can ensure that those funds carry over.
Right.
Because before it was a very manual process. Departments were submitting a request to carry over funds, but that's not how it functions in munis, so.
So whatever approval or level that is, and then that's converted into a purchase order.
Yes.
The purchase order is going to be the vehicle to carry the funds over to the next fiscal.
Correct.
Okay. That's all I had.
Thank you, Paul. Any other questions on Article 1? Nope.
All in favor?
We want to vote on Article 1?
Sure.
All right, great. All in favor of Article 1, say aye.
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 All right, 5 ayes. All right, so moving on to Article 2. This is in regards to ratifying the CBA. Any questions, comments from the board before we vote?
No, this is pretty standard.
None? Okay.
It's, my only, this is 2%?
It is a 2% increase. It's already been factored into this year's budget.
2% per year?
Yes.
Next 3 years.
Okay. All right, let's vote on Article 2. All in favor of Article 2, say aye.
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 Aye. All right, 5 ayes. Article 2. Okay, next up, Article 3. This is in regards to the fiscal year 2024 Schedule A compensation plan. Do we have any questions or comments from the board before we vote?
It's 2% increase as well.
Correct.
Okay. Some department heads, minority, town employees, okay.
All right, seeing no questions or comments, we'll bring this to a vote. All in favor of Article 3, say aye.
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 Aye. It's 5 ayes. Okay, Article 4. This is in regards to the transference of 2.5 million and, well, 2,552,301 and 54 cents from free cash. There's 28 different items on here. Do we have any questions or comments from the board?
Didn't seem to be anything alarming in here.
I have 2 comments. First is that I'm willing to give this a favorable vote, subject to line item number 8 being pulled, which is 93,000. I think I scribbled it out.
Yep.
93,000, I got that right? For the preparation of RFP documents for the restoration of school roofs. And that's more in pertinence to the fact that we don't have a Article 5 going forward. It was pulled, and so that is no longer relevant.
So that number changes to 2, 4.
Yeah, so you're right, we should do the math there.
It's like, it's 93, so it's like 2, 4, 4.
Yes, sir.
I had scratched that amount out at a previous meeting. Did they would pull this, or?
Yeah, this is the one, I think it was at the last meeting that we went through this, and we called out that,
They pulled it, yeah.
yeah, that this one was connected to Article 5, and being as Article 5 got pulled, then this should not be included here. So the number should be 2,252,301.54 less 93,000 even, which results in a new number of 2,459,301 spot 54. Any other questions or comments from the board regarding Article 4?
Oh,
So we'll take, oh, go ahead, Brian.
I have one question, just on, just kind of the form and content of this 250,000 maintenance on lines 6 and 7. Just a question, in reviewing previous years, this seems like a consistent amount. I was just curious why these amounts aren't included in the initial budgets.
I think the reason why that they're showing up in the free cash article is because a lot of the maintenance needs that are being performed at the school as well as here in the town are one-offs, so they're hard to predict. So the 250 covers a lot of those one-off challenges with maintenance, because as you know, when system fails, you don't know it until it actually starts to fail. There is a lot of preventative maintenance that happens on an annual basis. However, that preventative maintenance may not necessarily uncover an issue or a challenge with something that's aged. So the 250 covers the infrastructure for not only the schools, but also the other town buildings that are being addressed. The 250, it's a split between obviously the school and the town. So That is the reason why it's showing up here. And I agree, it probably at some point should go into the regular operating budget, but because a lot of the needs are one-offs, that's why it's appearing here in free cash, because that's the purpose of free cash.
Okay, and on the school side of thing, for the facilities piece, do they have the same kind of detailed breakout like the town does for those components? Or is it,
So the detail that you're seeing on the town side, that's actually the funding sources. So we're closing out those special article items that are no longer needed. And those transfers are actually making up the 250 that's being requested.
okay, thank you.
Just to clarify on that one too, this whole article isn't free cash. That there's those other items, those are other financing sources.
Free cash, wastewater retained earnings, water retained earnings, solid waste retained earnings, or other available sources. Understood. Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Thank you for making sure that was clear to anybody listening. Okay. Any other questions, comments on Article 4? Seeing none, we'll bring it to a vote. If you are in favor of Article 4 at the new amount of $2,459,301.54, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. No opposed. Move on to, so Article 5's been stricken, so there's no need to vote on that. Okay, so we'll move to Article 6. This is in regards to raising and appropriating and transferring funds of the amount of $1,050,000 for the purpose of a feasibility and schematic design study for roof replacement over at Martinson Elementary School. Any questions or comments from the board? I will note that I did get some information from one of our board members that was not able to make it tonight. And he had spent some more time with Tom Miller, the assistant superintendent, and he had gotten some additional information. It more or less was a lot of the same that we had heard at the joint advisory board and select board meeting, which is that the full estimate of the project is estimated to be between $3 and $5 million. The real risk here is that $1 million for this $1 million plus here for this feasibility study would obviously be wasted if the town elected not to move forward in October 2025 with the actual roof replacement. However, my understanding is from Mr. Miller, Mr. Russell, and others is that this roof is in very bad need of repair and replacement. And it was also noted, too, that the last major investment into Martinson Elementary was $8.1 million, and that was in 1999. It's quite a long time ago. Any other questions? Any comments?
There is some matching funds on this as well.
There's some matching funds from the state that, well, they're not promised, right? It's a grant that we'd have to go after. But the general belief is that we could go after and be successful in recouping approximately 49% of the total cost for the project would be reimbursed by the state through a grant fund. But that, again, just to be clear, that does have to be applied for. It's not a automatic application and you get it. Any other questions or comments on Article 6? Seeing none, all in favor of Article 6, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 5 yeses. All right, Article 7. So this is in regards to the town amending the code regarding our bylaws on, regarding alcoholic beverages and licensing for that on town property. Any questions or comments from anybody on the board? I guess my only question that I haven't been able, and I don't know who had that article.
The This one was, Article 7 is
Brian.
Brian.
Brian, you familiar with Article 7? You can speak to it?
Yeah, so, I mean, it's basically fairly consistent across other localities as far as the process and procedure and really the approval of these one-day type permits. So it seems like a reasonable addition to allow things that were probably occurring previously to have it under the bylaws.
So why is it up for consideration, though? I mean, we're talking about, if I understand correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we're talking about the allowance, regular recurring allowance of intoxicating substances on town property? Is that, what am I missing anything? Or help me understand a little bit more of kind of the intent of this bylaw, if you could.
Yeah, so it's just allowing for a process for those one-day permits of alcoholic consumption for events, as noted as like the downtown on the pier when they have that one-day event for lobster. So similar type events like that. So it's not, and it's just formalizing the process where those applications go through.
And how is it done today?
I'm not aware of how it's done. I think
Okay. Do we know what the cost is, the added cost of doing this, if any, to the town?
no additional cost.
There's no additional cost? And do we know anything about the criteria for getting a permit? What makes one worthy of getting a permit?
I don't know if anyone can speak to that, but it's basically just based on, approving the selection.
Any idea?
Typically, when someone applies, especially for an event on town property, it goes before the select board. The select board goes through the process of reviewing the application, and then a determination is made at that point. So it's a similar process.
But I'm sorry, I'm missing something. What's different about this process?
The difference is that the bylaws don't match the process. So we need to change the bylaw to match the process to allow this to happen.
So it's a formality is what you're saying. In other words, the practice is we're already doing it.
Correct.
Okay. In the practice of allowing alcoholic consumption or consumption of alcohol on town properties, I'm assuming nothing new
No.
with permits?
No.
Okay.
But this allows the select board that special permitting privilege in order to review the process. It's very, very much what happens now. It is just formalizing that process.
How did this come up then? I mean, if it was all just working fine and dandy, I'm just curious. If it was all fine and dandy before, why all of a sudden now is it appearing as an article? Is it just
I
kind
think
of,
it's because there was a little bit of attention focused on this over one event that happened this summer, and this kind of made this rose to that level of we need to review the bylaw and be consistent, but in order for us to be consistent with the bylaw, we need to change the bylaws. But our bylaw is different from the neighboring communities that also allow alcohol to be consumed on town property at special events.
what happened in the summer?
I believe it was a festival that was taking place.
Okay, so what happened that suddenly made this an issue?
That's a great question. Not sure the actual specifics as to how this was discovered, but that one event was the lightning rod that spurred the changing of the bylaw. And would need to be changed anyhow because our practice is not consistent.
The thing I'm struggling with is I don't know, somebody help me here. I'm not getting like a very clear answer. Like, I think I know, and like generally it's like, yeah, it makes sense, but at the same time, I don't know, doesn't seem crystal clear, which bothers me.
The reason for it, or
Where it's coming from, like the intent of this, why it's even an issue, and is there any cost by making this formal? In other words, it's almost like the town's been following a process that was not enabled in law, if I understand correctly, right? So it was not enabled in law, but we were just doing the process anyways, because that's just what we did. Okay, that's fine. But now we're bringing it to a vote. Should it be a law? Should it even be allowed? And I guess that's the,
Well, I guess that part of this, maybe Eric could speak to this, but it's to have advance written consent by a select board member on any request. I'm assuming previously that wasn't probably part of the process.
Maybe, is that it?
Eric, sorry to interrupt you. Are you willing to speak on this for a minute? Could we ask? This is in regards to Article 7, which is to amend the town code in regards to the peace and good order for alcoholic regulations regarding alcoholic beverages and formalizing the permit process. I'm just curious to get your thoughts, obviously, as a member of Select Board.
I reached out to get an answer because my concern is that the way it's written and reading the Mass General Law, which I believe is Chapter 138, Section 14, it looks like it applies only to nonprofits. And I think just having it apply to nonprofits, if that's the case, is unfair, where if you have a not-for-profit business, should have the same ability to have the same access to how can you look at it as for the nonprofits that in town that do that use town grounds to do their activities.
So this would give for-profit businesses the ability to have.
No, I mean, the way I'm reading it, and this is what I'm waiting for an answer on, according from the looks of 138, Chapter 138, Section 14, is that it looks like it just applies to nonprofits, but I'm not too sure. That's why I'm trying to get, because I think it's just unfair if that's the case. So I'm trying to get an answer on that. So my look at it is that, I mean, my own personal opinion is that if it only applies to nonprofits, I'd be against it. I think it should be open to everybody in regards to that.
So you mean businesses and so nonprofits, so for example, the race that's held in, the race that's held in the Esplanade, that goes to a nonprofit, right? The proceeds from that, is that what so you think that, I'm just trying to get a feel for, I'm also not understanding.
I mean, you can look at it as a nonprofit.
Yeah.
We all know what that is,
Mm-hmm.
but then for-profit, so just a standard business that.
So if a company wanted to come in and run the same kind of a race, they would have the same access to doing that kind of a race in town, or whatever the activity is.
Correct.
Is that what you mean? Okay. So this would level the playing field for everybody.
Yeah, that's the way I would look at it. I mean, why cater to one group or one individual or whatever, however you want to look at it. I mean, if you're going to do it one way, do it the whole way. I think especially for a for-profit business, that could be beneficial to the town in many aspects in regards to opening this up to them. But like I said, my personal reading of the law is that it looks like it just applies to nonprofits, and that's what I'm trying to get an answer on in regards to how this law applies, if it's just nonprofits or if it applies to for-profits as well, so.
So sorry, Eric, if I sound confused again. It sounds like we're not certain whether or not this applies to both profit and not-profit.
Well, it certainly applies to nonprofits, the way I
Right.
read it.
Yeah.
Like I said, my concern is it doesn't apply to for-profit businesses.
So we need to figure that out, is in other words.
Yeah, like I said, I reached out and I'm trying to get that answer, and as of the moment, I don't have it just yet. I'm hoping to get it this week or hopefully before town meeting, If not, I guess I'll have to ask at town meeting to see what town council says.
Okay.
This must be Bob's.
So just, because if it comes back that it's only nonprofit, and we approve this in town meeting, it would only be for nonprofit, is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, I mean, if the citizens vote on this at town meeting to accept this, it looks like it just applies to nonprofits. But like I said, I just don't know at this current time.
Well, it sounds like,
It doesn't seem to me reading this, and forgive me if I'm, but it does not seem like it's strictly for nonprofit here, unless I'm missing something.
I think
You're
the,
reading the law,
If
chapter
you-
one,
yeah, it's a
chapter
reference
one,
law.
chapter 138, section 14?
Pardon me? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Are you reading the law, chapter 138, section 14?
No, I'm just reading what's here.
Yeah, so you gotta read,
Yeah.
you gotta read, see, that's the whole thing, is that you gotta read
Mass
chapter
General
138,
Law,
section
chapter
14.
Oh, right here, okay.
okay. I mean, my comment would be is that the issue with this is, I don't want to vote no, I don't want to vote yes, because I feel like we have incomplete information, and I don't want to vote on it
Private land or private building or private structure.
I agree.
until we have complete information.
Agreed.
Yep, agree.
I'm not saying no, it just,
Yep,
like, how can
totally
you
agree.
say yes to something when, here we're pointing out that we don't have all the answers that we need? I think we can just abstain to take a vote on this.
Well,
I don't know why we couldn't.
What we do is we could vote before town meeting. We could meet a little bit earlier and vote if we have
If
private
somebody gets us
information.
the answer.
Yeah. No, I agree. Okay. All right, let's do that then. Mr. Kelly, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
All right, so that's Article 7, so we're going to abstain until town meeting and then vote before. Okay. Article 8, which is Parks and Playgrounds. Questions? Yes.
Well, I met with our town administrator, and the purpose of this article is simply to prevent any issues that have arisen regarding ADA compliance and with regards to our playgrounds and parks. Just seems to make sense that we follow, and follow this recommendation for this, this, change.
Do we have any sense of what this cost?
I did not ask that question.
Because the thing about this, and look, I'm all about parks and playgrounds. My kids use, or one kid uses the playgrounds, and we love it. But it says that these need to be reconstructed. So not just new ones that are constructed, but it literally will require that we approach all playgrounds out there, the way I understand it, and make adjustments to it. So if that's the case, then there's going to be some sort of cost. Do we have
Well,
any?
I do think that the people or the organizations that use these fields pay a fee.
Okay.
So, when I spoke with Mr. Maresco, he didn't raise any concerns about cost. It's just bring us into compliance with the law.
This is where again, this is me speaking only, but I don't know how we vote on things and support things when we don't know how much it's going to cost. And it's not, again, that I want to say no. I want to say yes. I want to say that this should be something that we should invest in order to make sure that it's available to everybody. But at the same time, if we don't know how much it's going to cost, what's the...
Where does the money come from?
Where is the money? I don't... I'm trying to understand, again, because
It's about
it...
accessibility though, Rick. I think it's about bringing accessibility to, people that have disabilities, making sure that all of the playgrounds are actually, in compliance with the laws regarding accessibility, okay?
It wasn't a concern with Mr. Maresco. He never brought it up.
With all due respect to Mr. Maresco, there's a lot of things that he may or may not bring up.
No, I know,
And at
but-
the end of the day, I want to make sure we get answers that we can,
So
I can
some
go
of the-
back and revisit him.
I think that would be a good idea.
Okay.
Let's make sure that we get some sort of a sense of what,
There are some children that are not able to access the playgrounds because of the way that they're.
well, let me be clear, I'm not trying to find reasons to say no to this. I want to say yes to this because it makes
Okay.
complete
Right.
sense, right? But our job in the advisory board is to look after the fiscal health and responsibility of the town, and how can we do that if we're just saying yes to something we have no idea how much it costs? It's just a matter of, it's,
think if
if we come back and it's like, okay, it's $2 million, I mean, it's like, okay, well, now we know what the cost is, but otherwise, are we just signing a blank check when we when we approve
I don't
something
think
like
so,
this?
but I'll find out.
Okay.
So the way I look at something like this is if it goes through and it opens up a box saying, okay, now we got to do an audit of all our parks and come up with all the recommendations of reconstruction or make them compliant. So it might be, the answer might be that, yeah, that's what's going to happen. We're going to go through an audit. Here's all the recommendations. These are all the reconstructions that need to make them ADA and compliant. Somebody puts a number to that, and maybe we'll go to town hall, in the spring or the next fall, but the way this reads right now, it's a good point. We don't want to be voting on something that's going to show up out of midair for another $2 million worth of.
Yeah.
I think we're talking about children not being able to access things that every other child is able to access. And so do you have any answers for us at all?
Well, it's really about the code. It's not necessarily about a project that's going to get underway. So first and foremost, we're voting, this is about changing the code to reflect what the needs should be as far as the requirements for these parks to make sure that they're safe and that they're accessible. If there is a cost, that cost would either be presented to the capital committee or it would be presented from capital to advisory. So there would be an opportunity for this board to weigh in on any sort of cost that would come as a result of any sort of review of the current assets here in the town.
Well, it would have been nice to know if somebody has done some kind of an audit of the parks and saying, it's a $50,000 or $500,000 upgrade to bring these things in compliance. I agree with the code, but once it's in,
Right.
now we got to go up.
Now we got to comply with it. We can't turn around and just say, well, we're going to vote down the funding because we changed our minds. Like, once it becomes code, we should abide by the law because it's law at that point.
Right.
So that's why, again,
Right.
like, on its face,
Right.
it's a yes for me. But I don't feel we have enough information, and I think the town has a responsibility to provide that information to us.
It was not a concern. Mr. Kelly, do you have any idea on this?
The one concern I have with this, in the way the language reads, is it sounds like that, my concern is that it sounds like if I think they call it an ASTM code, if that changes, then you got to do, change whatever it is in the park, it sounds like. It's not like your house where you build your house to a code and then you're good to go from there on. The way this reads, it sounds like is if an ASTM changes, then all of a sudden you got to change that park to go along with that ASTM. And that should be a question that should be asked in regards to the matter, is that if that ASTM changes, do you have, now, are we going to change the park, immediately go out and say, oh, the ASTM changed, now we got to reconfigure all the parks or do whatever. That'd be a concern of mine. I mean, I do agree that the parks, the playgrounds, something needs to be done with them. There's no doubt about that. And I think it has been addressed to a degree. It should have never gotten to the way it has in regards to the summer where they closed them. That was just ridiculous. But like I said, if you read the language real good, it almost looks to me that if an ASTM changes, that all of a sudden now it just starts a whole new process in regards to doing whatever you need to the parks to keep up with those codes every time they possibly change.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
You're welcome.
We could take a vote on this. I'm just and this is again just me, that I think abstaining on this vote for now until we can get further information between now and town meeting would be wise. Do we want to take a vote on abstaining from a vote? I think we're supposed to do that. Brian, do you have anything to throw in before we vote?
No. I mean, I understand the concern, but I mean, I think it's well intended, so
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
I
no,
don't see an issue with it.
Right.
completely agree. All in favor of abstaining from the vote tonight for Article 8, say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
So we have
Brian, that was an aye? Is that-
Yes, aye.
Okay, thank you. Yeah,
tabling 7 and 8.
yeah. So Donnie, you're gonna,
I'll see.
okay.
tomorrow or Wednesday, and, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and even if he can prepare like an email or something that just gives us a rundown of what we anticipate.
the
And I realize that we haven't probably done a whole ton of studies and everything else like that.
Maybe not, I'll find out.
Yeah. And also, what is the risk with, to the point that Mr. Kelly pointed out, that there's unforeseen changes that we might be signing up for there? I mean, I think we need to understand what that risk is. We're not saying no.
What is
So
the
every
risk?
time the
What is
code
the risk?
changes, do we have to comply
Yeah.
with the new code, or is it the same as when you are, you know?
Well, codes are going to change and improve all along. So, I mean, if we're up to code today and the law changes tomorrow, it doesn't mean we got to jump right on that. It's usually when you're planning to do an improvement, just like in your home.
Okay. All right. Move on to Article 9.
One other thing I forgot
Oh,
to mention, in when
sorry.
I just had it written, typed in here. I'm thinking back, I think there may be a reason for this to get us aid to fund the improvements.
So there may be a grant
There may be a grant, so I'll find out, but,
Okay.
We shouldn't have.
you know, Mr. Kelly,
What are you asking?
As much as-
there may be a grant they may be applying for that we have to vote this, and then they can maybe get that funding to bring us into compliance.
In my opinion, there's always a possibility of a grant being out there, but I would look at, probably the funding would probably come from the CPC fund for the playgrounds.
Well, I'll ask him what's the reasoning behind this?
So how much it
Then we
costs? and
know-
where
then
is the
we
funding?
know.
Where's
The reasoning behind what?
This article, maybe we need to have it to get funding to help us bring us into compliance. I'll find out, I don't know.
Well, I mean, the reason behind it is the crap show that happened over the summer in regards to closing down all the playgrounds, or most of them anyways. And then some of them, I would agree, are not up to date in regards to, or maybe even not built that well in regards to those that may be physically impaired. So I think that's the issue right now at hand, so in funding that. Like I said, the whole thing, my concern would be is that, like I said, as it reads, it sounds like if an ASTM changes at any moment, that's where you're funding, the expense may come in, because all of a sudden now it sounds like, all right, a code has changed, and now we gotta be up to date with that, even though you got a brand-new playground in place.
I'll try and get a dollar and cents.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, and I would say too, just again, a brief risk
Yeah,
assessment.
fine, good
Be
question.
helpful.
And where the funding comes from.
And where the funding comes from.
Right.
And do we need to comply every time there's a change, right?
Yep. Okay. All right, let's move on to Article 9. So I don't know, what are we, halfway through? We could probably make this by going all right. Article 9 is in regards to authorizing the Select Board to declare available disposition, fancy word for a sale, of a parcel of town-owned land owned at 1929 Main Street. Whose article was this?
It's Brian.
Right?
Brian. Mr. Crowley, could you help us understand this a little bit? I guess I had some questions on this. First is, why does the town own the land? What is the town presently doing with the land? How much do we expect to gain for the disposition of the land, the sale? How many units would be expected to be on the land, and are there any expenses the town that the town will endure that will net against those proceeds? So I threw 10 questions at you once,
Yeah,
so in any order.
I still have a couple questions out on this one.
Okay.
As far as, it's a very small parcel of land, so it's like 0.8 acres, so as far as size, it's very limited. As far as the 40 household units would be based on Select Board declaration of surplus, and I do believe it goes to a housing trust that oversees that process.
Do we know why the town owns it in the first place? If you guys,
didn't ask that question.
if you guys know the answer, you can, no idea?
Before our tenure.
Okay. Do we know anything about what the expected use of the, well, that's not a smart question. It's for residential affordable housing, correct?
Right.
Okay. Do we know anything about that other than it's residential affordable, quote, housing, like any specifics? Or is this just like sort of a sell it and see what happens?
Right, correct.
So why are we,
There's no use for the town for that piece of land, so it's likely going to the housing trust.
Declares it as surplus and it automatically goes to the housing, to the Affordable Housing Trust. I don't know why.
So it's just a piece of that, and then they do with it as they see fit in accordance with the, measure making it affordable housing. So what specifically is happening with that piece of land, I'm not sure, but it's overseen by the housing trust.
It's a select board issue.
yeah, again, Eric, you're, the select board submitted this. Do you have any thoughts on this? Because I feel like we're again searching for answers that we just don't have.
I just want to correct you, Chair, that I do not submit these articles.
Oh.
These articles are submitted to the Select Board.
Understood, thank you, Eric.
You're welcome. I have concerns with this article myself because the town owns it. And right now, I don't understand why we couldn't do an affordable house or housing project on it while the town still owns the land. The town relieving this land, in my opinion, would be a mistake because as we're trying to reach the GLAM goal of 1.5% land dedicated to affordable housing, relieving this land to a private developer or whoever else would set us back from reaching that goal. That's a big concern of mine. And the other thing is, I think you mentioned it's supposed to may possibly go to the housing trust. My look at it as well is that the Marshfield Housing Authority, I believe, also can have oversight in these matters as well. I also question why they're not involved in this. So, like I said, I believe the town of Marshfield could keep it, in my opinion, and do some kind of affordable project, small affordable project there, but also maintain it to keep us within, not retracting from our GLAM number as a negative to us going forward.
So you're saying that you're concerned this wouldn't become part of the percentage of affordable housing in the town?
If it gets, see, the whole thing is that if it gets released to a private entity, we lose the land and then we lose the GLAM, whatever percentage we are at the GLAM number. So even if it's maybe possibly dedicated as affordable, I don't know if that's going to count, even if that property is towards that GLAM number, if it is considered affordable. I just don't know the whole, that's something I didn't ask and I'm not sure of at the moment, But the whole thing is I look at is that the town owns the land, and there's already a house on it, that why not keep the land, keep our number, the GLAM number, but we can also possibly build have an affordable house there or a couple of houses on that spot. That's the way I would look at it anyways, in my opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
You're welcome.
So the notes that I have from the joint meeting say that this allows the
Sherry?
select board. Can you hear me?
Probably need to speak
Oh.
up on that.
So from my notes from the joint meeting says that this allows the select board to declare a surplus and this land will go to the Affordable Housing Trust. Does that sound right?
Oh, I'm sorry, it doesn't say.
That's what was said at.
I was talking to Joe, so I didn't hear what
Okay.
you said.
So at the joint meeting, it said it allows the select board to declare this a surplus, and it automatically goes to the Affordable Housing Trust.
I don't know what the Affordable Trust is. I don't know if it's supposed to mean the Marshfield Housing Trust. you may have to inquire on that language.
Yeah, that's what I assume, is that it was the Marshfield Housing Trust.
I would be in the impression that's what it would be.
Yeah, and doesn't the property in that housing trust count towards the affordable?
That's a complex thing. I'm not too sure. Would you be able to answer that, Joe?
No, it doesn't specify it go into the trust.
Oh, it doesn't specify.
Joe Pasevich. It doesn't specify it go into the trust, and also there's no detail as to what they plan on doing with it. If you go take a look at it, obviously somebody's been clearing the land, and it appears they have done some perk test pits out there. So somebody's got a vision already as to what is going to be done with it, and that would be good for you and for the town people to know what's already in motion. As to who actually gets it, it's not clear to me who gets it, or who's going to retain possession of it, or if it's going to be part of maybe a MHOP program sale. I don't know. There's a lot of missing information there.
I don't remember
Thank
who
you, sir.
spoke. I don't remember who spoke at the joint, if that's what was said,
Okay.
that it went to the affordable, but it sounds like we need it.
Brian, my opinion is that we need to get some better understanding of some of these fundamental questions before being able to move a vote on Article 9.
I agree. Now, we got a few people here that are well-informed, more informed than us, and they're not quite sure either.
Yep. No, agreed. Okay. I'd like to call a vote to abstain from voting on Article 9. Everyone in favor of abstaining from voting on Article 9, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. It's 3 abstentions. Oh, my goodness. We're going to have to get together nice and early before the next meeting.
6 o'clock.
Yeah, it's going to be there early. Okay, so it's staying until town meeting. Okay, Article 10. Who has Article 10?
Brian?
I have this one.
Okay, Brian, go ahead.
So this one related to phase 1 of a project for approximately $230,000 for the phase 1 design of land near the rivershed. I discussed the article with Susan Karen, the Open Space Chair Committee. I went over some of the details of the proposals that went out to bid, but 2 competitive bids, and this is for phase 1. So there's detailed expenses that were provided as far as what those expenses related to. Some of the costs relate to where it is particularly related to the watershed, the riverbank there. So that's why some of the costs were a little bit higher than I kind of would expected for the design, engineering, and permitting. I believe a lot of the actual expenses relate to permitting. And as far as phase 2, there isn't, until they complete this phase, they don't have detail on the exact expenses for the next phase of the project.
Okay, so this $230,000 is to basically figure out all that out, right?
Yeah, to make sure that the future project plans and designs are in compliance with a certain waterway area there because of where it's located.
Okay. All right, any other questions on Article 10? And this money's coming from where? This is coming from the Community Preservation Fund?
CPC.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, great. Any other questions? Comments? Call for a vote on Article 10. All those in favor of Article 10 say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Article 11, this is, will the town vote to act upon the recommendation of the Community Preservation Committee and the Open Space Committee to appropriate $50,000 to open, from Community Preservation Fund Open Spaces Reserves for unknown owner title searches or take any, okay. I remember discussing this one very well at the Joint Advisory Board, Select Board meeting. If I understand, Brian, is this yours too?
No.
This is yours, Donnie?
Yeah, I talked with Kevin Cantwell, and it's the purpose is to find out who owns the property
Right.
and possibly purchase it. And this would increase our open space And another advantage is it brings us more into compliance with 40B. And it's funding that they have to pay for it.
But the big thing, the big benefit here, and obviously 50,000 is real money, it's not a gigantic sum, but is that we know who owns the land.
Yep.
Which right now we do not.
Increases the
And
land.
that seems like a bit of a problem. We should know that. Okay. All right, I have no questions, further questions or comments. Anybody else? No?
Pretty clear.
Okay. Should we take a vote on Article 11?
Yes.
All those in favor of Article 11, say aye.
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 Brian, you just-
Oh, we're at Article 12, the fun one.
Can we skip it
That's quick.
and go beyond it and save that one till last?
I think when we're talking about Article 12, we're talking about Article 12, 13, and 14, right? Because these are all grouped together. 13 and,
Wait, Rick?
what's that?
You don't want to wait and go through the others so that we get through them and go back to this one?
Well, let me ask a question. Do we have, in reference to Article 12, there's been a significant amount of time spent on this. Do we have any questions? Anybody on the board?
So and I wasn't in town for the joint, so I missed some of this. All I've been trying to do is catch up. In real high level, what I understand, this is what the planning board has mapped out here on Plain Street would be in compliant. For that to be converted to multi-housing, developer would have to come in and purchase some or all that property in order to construct multifamily housing. At a very high level, is that the gist of this?
Well, there's 650 units that are being zoned for in this, right? The act, there's 650 units, and the way that Greg Giemond and his team have spent the last 2 years is trying to figure out where to put that in an area that they believe will have the minimal impact, right?
Right.
That was their, at the joint advisory board and select board meeting, that was his testimony, right? Is that was their number one goal, along with meeting compliance, right? So it's kind of like, what do we do the minimum to comply while at the same time creating the smaller impact on the town? That's the position that they took. So obviously, at a maximum, it could be all 650 units, or I think it's 650 units, if I remember correctly, the number.
490s to 590s.
I know from speaking to a few others that the anticipation from the planning board is that it'll create 650 that are zoned for, but that 300 is probably the range of what they actually expect. Because the approach that they took, the strategy was, again, like, do it in a way that creates a situation where it becomes very, very, very difficult. So, for example, a developer that comes in would have to build their own wastewater treatment plant. And that becomes obviously, it's a cost, right? I don't know how much that costs, but I'm sure it's a pretty hefty cost. And then you have, the other argument that's been outlined is that there is certain, businesses and whatnot, that they've talked to the business owners, they've talked to the attorney at Quirk, they've talked to others down there, and nobody's expressing a desire to sell. However, I'd also, the flip side of that coin is just because they don't want to sell now doesn't mean that they won't sell later, right?
Right.
It's a two-sided coin. Yeah, but hopefully that somewhat answered your
Yeah,
question.
that's kind of, because when I asked a few people that weren't too informed, they thought it was, this is eminent domain, they're taking all this property, and everything's going to be mowed down from the high school all the way to Quirk. So there's a lot of misinformation out there, but that's what I wanted to confirm what you just said.
Any other questions on it? Because if we don't have it, oh, yeah, go ahead.
My concern is, and maybe I'll defer again to Mr. Kelly, but if we vote this down, the penalties to the town are going to be devastating.
All right, so what do you want to ask?
Well, if we say no,
Yep.
is it going to really impact us with penalties that'll be imposed upon us by the state, holding funds for a variety of,
Well, I mean, have you read the law?
pardon?
Have you read the law? Or I will call it the so-called law, the MBTA zoning act, maybe we can call it. Have you read it?
I mean,
I've read the law, Eric, but go ahead with your question.
Okay. So if you read the act, I think it's letter B, all right? And it says in there, if a community fails to, implement this, let's say just for wording, it says that there are three grants that you won't be able to receive. And if you read all those grants, none of those grants impact us. The Mass Works is one that is a big one, I believe. That would only harm us. I should say it doesn't impact us because if we fail to adopt the MBTA zoning act, it wouldn't have any impact on us because all that funding would go to such a big project like that if you were to implement it. And then if you look at what the legislature recently did with the economic development bill in regards to trying to pressure the communities that have said no in denying you funding on numerous grants, I look at it, it's probably unconstitutional on the legislature's part to do that. And I would, in my opinion, not as a lawyer, but in my opinion, seeing it probably could be challenged and probably won in a court of law. Then you have the Attorney General on her own to Milton, telling Milton that they can't have, I think it was like 9, 10 grants. I don't know what gives her the right to do that either. Because the act in itself, or law, however you want to look at it, especially in letter B says that if a community fails to adopt it, there's three funding grants that they don't get. That's the penalty. But the executive branch and the legislature and the Attorney General's office, for some phenomenal reason, are gung-ho about cramming this down everybody's throat and giving them misinformation about it, in my opinion, to accept this, in which they don't have to. So you can listen to the threats and take a stand and protect your community, in my opinion. Plant that flag, because my opinion is that that they can't cram this down our throat, just the way the original act or law, or however you want to look at it, is written. Even Bob Galvin at the meeting last week said that, out of his own words, said that, I believe he said that this could be challenged. He wasn't going to describe how it was going to be challenged, but he said this could be challenged.
So, thank you, Mr. Kelly. So some new information that we did get that's come out in the last couple of days or something like that, 3 days. This, first of all, is that the town is expected to realize greater expenses than revenue. It could be in the millions of dollars, could for school, police, fire, et cetera. And if the town decides to vote in favor of the bylaw, the town still retains its right to take legal action against the state. That's something I've also learned as well and clarified. So if the town did want to move forward past the bylaw and then turn around and put suit against the state, the town would have every ability to do so. I'll tell you that this one's really, really bugged me. Going back to our meeting in the spring, I asked how much this would cost, and I got the answer back that we don't know. As of several weeks ago, I asked the same question, and I got the response that we don't know. 2 days ago, we finally get some sort of an answer, and the answer is confirmatory that the costs could be exceptionally large, in the millions of dollars, exceeding whatever revenue could come from this, which puts a significant financial risk in the hands of the town. This has all the markings for me of an unfunded mandate. And regardless of how people stand on building more housing, it absolutely drives me bananas that we're stuck in this situation. The anger in this town is palpable, and it's palpable for a damn good reason. I was able to meet several groups of citizens this last week here, and one of them was particularly helpful, and they were gracious enough to welcome me into their home. And I understand why they're angry. They should be. I'm angry. This is infuriating that we're being stuck in this position. Furthermore, the state has positioned themselves strategically so that our recourse is severely limited. This is something when you go and you talk to the attorneys, you read the legal briefs, you see the argument that the Attorney General put in front of the SJC, it's evident that the state has done a great job in positioning themselves in order to make sure that we have limited recourse. And that just makes it all the more worse. Our elected officials at the state knew that this was a rough situation, but then they doubled down on it a month ago. To what Mr. Kelly was mentioning in regards to the economic development bill, which increases our exposure to grants that can be pulled away from towns not in compliance. What I'd like to know is who's yelling at them? Who's yelling at them for not kicking in state support to help with the housing crisis, and instead of focusing only on making a bigger stick? Where the hell's the carrot? That's what I want to know. Why are we yelling at people in our town and not at the people who made this law a reality? To me, that's it's frustrating. But with all that said, feelings, hope, and emotions are not a strategy. They aren't. We need a strategy. We need a strategy as a town. And as one of my board members put it, at this point, we're playing chess with the state. We need to play to win. And the choice now, regardless of where the town's vote goes on Monday, is how to position ourselves legally for what we should have had in the first place, which is maximum control over our town. So we're damned if we do, and we're damned if we don't. So now we got to make a really tough call as a town and think very smartly about our approach to get that control. And I've given this a considerable amount of thought myself, as I'm sure everybody else here has. And I think that the answer is probably a little simpler than it appears. A majority of our town is absolutely rightly concerned about this bylaw. And I'm concerned about it, and concerned about it for one reason and one reason only. Nothing more than just the fact that it's an unfunded mandate with no plan on how to fund it. Millions of dollars, which literally could represent 5-10% of our budget, that is going to come from where? We have no idea. And I've heard the argument made, well, it'll happen slowly. Death by 1,000 cuts is still death at the end of the day, whether it's one cut or 1,000 cuts. But we need to fight. I think that the town needs to fight this. And I really honestly think that we need to consider as a town legal action to take control of our fiscal destiny, because that is the problem with this. It's the fiscal problem. It's not a matter of affordable housing. Personally, I think affordable housing is fantastic. I think that the state is in a housing crisis, and we all have a responsibility to step up and do something about it. But taking away our fiscal control is ludicrous. But I'd also say that there's a smart way to fight, and there's also a not as smart way to fight. Anyone who's ever been in a fight, like a real fight, knows that you have to fight from a position of strength. You must be calculating, and you must be highly strategic, because if you don't, you lose. And in fact, you might end up losing more than you even originally thought. I do think that despite how upset this bylaw makes me, and it really pisses me off, I think that we should in fact accept it as the town planning board has worked for 2 years to ensure that the impact and the risk to us is minimal if accepted. There are 650 units zoned, but more likely that it's 300, according to the folks that we've entrusted to, at the planning board to provide us this information. But if we fight from a defensive position as opposed from an offensive position, then there is a high probability that we're going to be sued by developers, we're going to be sued by the state, and we're going to lose control, and we're going to end up building in excess of 1,100 housing units. And I don't think anybody wants that. And who the hell knows where they'll put the 1,100 housing units?
It'll be out of our control.
That would be, 1,100 housing units would be 3.5x more than what we want. So the only reason I'm going to vote yes is because I support that we take the first step in this fight by putting ourselves in a position of strength, where we call the shots. And when we are ready, I very strongly implore the Select Board to consider legal action against the state to seek financial relief in the case that developments do go up. Because as the Marshfield football team, I'm sure, would tell you, the best defense is a good offense. The state is smart, ridiculously smart. And we need to be smarter if we're going to ultimately win. And that would be my comments on Article 12.
Excellent.
Brian, any comments?
So as far as the legality of the law based on internal counsel, is he still believe that there's no legal issue with the actual law itself?
Yeah, the general consensus that I've been able to find, again, I'm not a lawyer, just what I've been able to find through asking questions, not just to town council, but going around and looking at what else has been argued before other towns and whatnot, is that nobody seems to be questioning, to Mr. Galvin's point, nobody seems to be questioning the constitutionality of it, even though I'm in agreement with Mr. Kelly that it does seem extremely suspect. I mean, we have laws at the federal level to protect states from unfunded mandates. So the fact that these unfunded mandates can exist in our state and impact our town is just is ludicrous. However, at the same time, I've looked at how this kind of thing has happened in the past before, and the state is in a very, very strong position. When you look at how the SJC has looked at other things that were similar, and their argument's been exceptionally strong. When you look at some of the questions from the justices and the SJC, I mean, it just seems obvious that, again, the state is playing, they're playing chess, and they're playing it damn well. And they just played it by getting the House and the Senate, the legislature and the Senate, to vote to put more penalties, in fact, in order to circumvent the problem that they already had in their own law. In our representatives, they voted for it.
Mr. Kelly has a comment.
Yes, Mr. Kelly. Been very gracious with your time today, sir. Thank you.
I just want to highlight a couple of things here. Look, if the state was so confident in this law or act, however you want to look at it, they wouldn't have put together the economic development bill they did to take grant funding away from us. I believe that you can't say what the state Supreme Court's going to do, but I believe we had to go beyond that. We'd win in all aspects of this. For the state to really put this economic development bill together and highlight all the grants they're going to strip away from the towns tells me that they are scared to death in trying to, in more communities going against them, and they're trying to get them compliant with it. In regards to the number of units that you may be under the impression that can be built, the state has a minimum. The minimum in regards to this, I think they're looking for the town is 1180. So that's the minimum. I believe Fox Run apartment complex, which I think is a combination of apartments and condos, I think it's near School Street. I believe that was purchased just over a year ago. So the developer there wouldn't have bought that my opinion, unless there was a financial gain, in my opinion. And they knew this MBTA was, MBTA zoning act was coming up. Probably figured in Marshfield it was going to fly passing colors and they were going to capitalize on it. There's no reason not to think that this developer will not mow down those buildings and go bigger. There's no reason not to think that the owner of Quirk Dodge will not sell his property to a developer, and that developer will build a monstrosity on that property. You have to remember that with the development up in Commerce Way in Enterprise Park, the owner of the two parcels that 140B was built and the other 40B is currently being built, sold that property based on the amount of units that were going to be built. And if I remember correctly on that, it was $28,125 per unit that was going to be paid to the owner of the property. And so I think the Madison property was, I think that was 249 units. And I believe the next property that is being currently built, I think that's at 279. So that's millions of dollars for those two pieces of property. Not to think that anybody that owns property on 139, especially when you look at Quirk, which is such a large parcel and there's other ones there, to think that they wouldn't capitalize on the ability to cash in on that land to a developer and make that kind of money. Utterly ridiculous not to think that way. We allow that, they're just going to pack it in, sell off, and then that whole area will be one massive apartment complex. And, they talk about the revenue it'll generate for the town. Well, it's like the chair said, that you can't get numbers what it's going to cost the town. And I bet you the cost is going to be so much more greater than what it will generate for revenue. And the whole thing is that quality of life in here, that'll be all over for us. I mean, some of you people here have been a long time. You've seen the changes. Allowing this to happen, I might look at it as that Marshall will be no longer. So I would, the whole thing is that I would say the state is putting the fear of God into a lot of people, but at some point we need to push back. And I think this law or act, however you want to look at it, we can push back, and we can push back great. Plant the flag, stand your ground, and tell our legislators, the Attorney General, and the Executive Office, we're not going to take their bullying, and we will fight regardless of what it takes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
I have a comment? The way I look at this and what you're saying, Mr. Hill, is all right. When we talk of litigation, what's the biggest thing about litigation is time. From what we've been told in these previous meetings, the X million in grants is going to be current. It's going to be current year and current next year. When we talk about being on the offense, if this is voted in next week, it can be voted out in 6 months. Why not?
Two-thirds. You need two-thirds to vote it out.
No, but
Majority.
what I'm saying is time. So if we,
No, that's incorrect. So I asked that question at the joint advisory board, select board meeting, and in fact, we could vote the answer I was given anyways. I'm not an attorney, but the answer that I was given at that meeting is that in fact, we could at a later time decide to vote it out, to eliminate the law, the bylaw. That was just the answer I was given.
Everything I'm hearing on that was if we passed it and then we try to rescind it, we'd go to a two-thirds vote. I mean, that could be wrong, but that was to my understanding.
Be a good, you guys know the answer? Sorry,
but-
you're the sole.
but clearly litigation's years. And the funding stops the 30th of this month. So I look at it as buying time to do this the smart way and go on the offensive without losing the funding. Because as Rick said, we either stop the project, stop the infrastructure, or raise the revenue someplace else, and that all has to be done in the next few months, not the next 5 years.
If we vote no, could, in January, if we discover the severe implications, have another town meeting? I mean, it's another special town meeting, maybe to change that? I mean, I've been on this board for a long time. These are two of the best arguments for going one way, the excellent arguments. It's scary.
I mean, you can always request a town meeting. I think requires X amount of signatures to get something to call a town meeting.
Would the state recognize that?
They had to recognize Milton's ballot initiative when Milton reversed it through the ballot. I think the bylaws required it to go to a ballot process. With us, it's no different than what we're going through right now, which is in April we voted it down unanimously, right? So now the select board isn't bringing it back. I think it's under the planning department. I think so. Let's say they're bringing it back. So let's say it does pass, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that next month it's not coming back again because the residents are going to get the signatures to get it back on, try and vote it down again.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So this could be a back and forth game for quite a while.
So the figures that we heard last week were roughly around $8 million in losses, including the first year. There were 13 additional grants that will be pulled from us if we don't vote this in. And some of those grants, impact is beach nourishment, there's seawalls, they're all, the Seaport Advisory Council, I guess there's a grant program of $5.8 million. All of those will impact our community. I mean, losing that funding that we fought hard for years ago for the seawalls will be pulled from us. And then where is that money going to come from? How are we going to, again, there's the unfunded mandate, right?
My look at it is this, Mrs. Costello, is that you can look at possibly losing that funding, or lose your town.
As Paul said, to fight this is going to be, it's not going to be quick. It's not going to be swift. It's going to take time. And here's the other thing. This has caused me a lot of personal angst. I mean, I don't like this. I'm going to be honest with you. This is very disturbing on so many different levels. But I have looked at this a lot of different ways. And, there is some ambiguity as to what's going to happen. There are a lot of unanswered questions still, right, in terms of the amount of funding. That aside, when I'm told that there are 13 grants that could be pulled from us, I have to consider that. And the other thing is...
Well, it's law now.
It's law. It's a law. This is not something, our chance to fight this should have been before it was passed, before it became a law. This is not,
You wouldn't be able to fight. You wouldn't be able to fight the economic development bill prior to becoming law because it wasn't law. You'd have to wait to become law and then fight it. But the whole thing is that right now, it may be law, but it really hasn't taken effect because the state hasn't taken a course of action against us, in my opinion. And you have to wait to see what happens January 1st.
But it was passed into law. The MBTA zoning was passed into law several years ago. It was under a different
Oh,
administration.
no, the MBTA, but it's...
Right, that's what I'm talking about, okay? So it is the law.
But here's the thing. Let them be in it. If a community chooses not to enact this, you lose 3 grants.
No.
Yes.
That's not what they're saying. That's under the...
Read
Well,
the MBTA Act, all right? 3 grants, that's it. The Attorney General took it upon herself on the
Right.
Milton one to
Yes.
apply, to add on, right? Probably unconstitutional by all means of the matter, right? Now your state legislature, those who supposedly represent the people in the communities, right? They put it into a law in trying to force you as well to help the governor and the Attorney General push this through. I mean, at what point do you say, you know something, I'm going to fight? And I believe we can't fight this. We can't fight this, and we can win this. And like I said, it's like let's put it this way. It's like what's going on right now with the cost of everything. And people need to learn how to have scaled back on things and have learned to try and live without certain things and budget themselves, right? So let's say the state does decide to go forward and show the bullies that they are. All right, well, the town's going to have to make adjustments in its spending and prioritize. I think we can do it, in my opinion. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to make a decision, obviously, what you want to do. As a board member and as someone that lives in the community.
Yeah.
We all know that if this MBTA goes on and the development starts, you're going to look back probably and say, I should have fought.
I think this is,
Again,
Oh, no,
I
go
just
ahead.
want, there's
Go ahead,
one more
please.
thing I want to say. Here's something goes beyond the money for me, okay? They are taking control, right? They're taking some control. I say,
Some, a whole lot. They're
I-
trying to take a whole lot.
but I say, okay, and listen, I hear you, okay? I understand. I don't like this. I'm not suggesting that I like this. For me, I'm looking at it, it's almost a pick your poison, which I hate, okay? But if they do what they claim they're going to do, that is going to impact all of us financially, okay? We're going to have to come up with the money. It could mean that there's,
Stop the project.
pardon me?
You let the town fall apart, you stop the project.
You stop everything, and the town starts to, it's going to change, one way or another. Hear me out, okay? Because here's the other thing. I'd rather us have control over where this zone is and what this looks like than to have the town go into receivership and have somebody else from the state come in and decide where this zone is going to be, how high these buildings can be, how much land they're going to take. You know, the town planner has done a good job in making sure that it's the least intrusive place in the town. To me, we have some control over that piece of it. Again, there's not a lot with fiscally, we don't really know what this is going to look like if this doesn't pass. It sounds like it could be, if it is just a few grants, you know, it's probably not that much money. But if it is what they're saying, it represents close to 10% of our budget. And, unfortunately, we're in the position of looking at we have to look at the fiscal piece of it, not how we all hate it. Nobody likes this.
Do you not, the amount of spending this town does every year at town meeting, you don't think we could find 10%?
So where do you think you could find that from?
I think there's a lot of places.
Tell me where.
Where?
Because
At the moment, I couldn't.
hold on. Sorry, we've got to move on and not debate where we're going.
No, I get that. The whole thing is that, look, you don't,
Respect
like you
the
said, you don't know what it's going to look like. That's the whole thing, is that you don't know what's going to be developed on that parcel of land. Like I said, the minimum is 1180. Someone already bought a piece of property banking on doing something with it. And there's plenty of other properties there. So, I mean, look, at the end of the day, you got to make a decision. My look at it, if you don't take a stand and fight this, they're going to come back for more. They will come back for another chunk of land to cram down our throats. Take the stand.
Mr. Chairman, may I offer a point of clarification or get clarification?
Point of clarification?
Clarification, I just heard the number $8 million thrown around as a one-year immediate impact to the town in terms of loss of grants. I don't know where that number comes from. It's a fallacy. The Seaport Economic Council doesn't even grant $8 million in a year, and their grants are split among 78 towns and cities. So this idea that there's, I think one person on your board even said, we're going to lose $9 million next year. The Seaport Economic Council, which I think was actually voting today, doesn't even grant that much. And again, it's spread out all over the place. So, I mean, this is part of the problem, is that the costs haven't been established. And we're hearing numbers thrown all over the place that are really being used as a scare tactic, in my opinion.
Well, and there's some important, to Mr. Pesovich's point, I think that there's some important, there is some nuances, right? Number one, the number was thrown out by Mr. Patterson at the last meeting that it's been about $9 million in grants that have been received over the last 10 years. And, you know, he rightly admitted he doesn't know exactly what the number is, but, you know, let's just say it's in that ballpark. Over 10 years, not per year, but over 10 years. I think Mr. Maresco's pointed out that he thinks that the impact could be $10 million, but to Mr. Pesovich's point, that $10 million could just be from one single year, and that's based upon a very rosy assumption, I'd say, too, that we're going to get all of those grants. So I completely appreciate Mr. Pesovich's point, and I think he brings up a good one. I also agree with Mr. Kelly that nobody in the town should assume that that the land out there is never going to sell, because it's capitalism, folks, right? So things sell. That's just it's just a fact of life. It's the economic system that we all love and hold dear. A couple things real quick, and then unless anybody objects, I think that we need to bring it to a vote, because we do need to get through the rest of the articles. This is a highly charged one, and we could probably spend the next 4 hours talking about it. Number one is that I did get clarification while we were sitting here that it would only be a majority vote that would be needed, not a 2/3 vote, in order to overturn a bylaw. So, for example, if we were to accept it this month at town meeting next Monday, we would have the opportunity to, at the next town meeting, or to Mr. Kelly's point, we could call a special town meeting before then that typically would probably, you know, there'd have to be obviously notice, and then there's a planning board process that would have to happen before that, but probably within several months, we could do something to overturn it. And all it would require is a simple majority vote. I respect Mr. Kelly a lot, and I think he raises very good points, just like the folks that I met with last week made some outstanding points. Again, my position is, and this is only my position, I also agree with Mr. Kelly, everybody has to decide how they want to vote, right? I mean, it's a free country. God bless America, right? I mean, this is the process that we're in, and this is why I said we shouldn't be yelling at each other. If anything, we should be calling Senator O'Connor and Representative Kearney and saying, why did you do this? But you know what? That ship's already sailing. If anything, maybe we should say, don't do that again. But regardless of which, it's very difficult, because it's really a decision between two styles of fighting. Do you fight from a defensive position? Do you fight from an offensive position? And which way is going to be more likely to or are we going to be more likely to persevere in? And I guess that's for each and every single person in the town, that's a choice that they're going to have to make next Monday. If there's no other question, is there any other questions or comments before we move to a vote?
Just one last thing is that the
Sure.
Supreme Judicial Court has not decided on this.
That's correct.
And there is pending litigation that
That's
is
right.
in being formulated right now.
Yep.
And to vote this in, and then to have the Supreme Judicial Court knock it down or modify it, or for pending legislation to succeed, we would have voted in a bylaw that we don't want. And we shouldn't vote it in until those decisions and those things are resolved. Thank you.
No, thank you, Mr. Pesovich, and that'll be our last comment and question on the matter. But I do agree, and you're absolutely correct that there has not been a decision made by the SJC. We don't know when one will be made. It will be made sometime in the next few months. I know that there's some timeline that they have to do that in, but regardless, again, we still have a decision to make. Do we want to be in a defensive position versus an offensive position? And if we do take an offensive position and the SGC comes along and says, you know what, Town of Milton, you're right, the state overstepped their boundaries and they cannot do this, I'll be the first guy in line at Town Hall saying, I want to get enough signatures to overturn this bloody thing because this is absurd. And I'm not against, again, more affordable housing, more housing, just period. This isn't even a question of affordable, it's just a question of housing to address the state's housing crisis, but to do it without funding is, I think, it's terrible, but hence, here we are. So anyways, let's take a vote. All those in favor of Article 12, say aye.
Aye.
Aye? Okay, so that's 5 yeses. All right, let's move on. And by the way, I just want to make one other comment before we move on. I can't overemphasize enough, I understand how frustrating this is for so many people, but this isn't something where we should be at each other's throats. This is something, I think, to Ms. Costello's point, that we should be pushing quite hard on our elected representatives, but we should also be pushing at the town, too, to take a very aggressive legal posture, regardless of how the town votes. Article 13 is, will the town vote to amend the 13 and 14 are, did I just step all over myself here? 13 and 14 are related to the MBTA zoning. Okay, so this would fit in. Can we take a vote on Articles 13 and 14 since they're both MBTA?
I think they make,
All follows along, right?
What's that?
They all follow along together.
right,
Yeah, correct. That's right.
the map change on 13.
Okay.
Table use.
15 is not part of the MBTA? No,
15 is
okay. All right, so we'll vote together on Articles 13 and 14. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right, so Article 15, who had Article 15?
I do.
You do. All right, Ms. Costello, please.
Okay, so out of Article 15, basically, this is about, as of effective February 2nd, the current law regarding accessory dwelling units will change. It is currently, the accessory dwelling units are granted by special permit, and effective on February 2nd, the state law changes and becomes by right and not regulated by special permit. There is no appeal. So basically, under the new law, there is just a review process, and there will be, that will be discussed at a regularly posted meeting to allow the neighbors, the abutters, to understand what's happening. Basically, the changes to the bylaw are that for an ADU, it can be no larger in gross floor area than half the gross floor area of the principal dwelling, or 900 square feet, whichever is smaller, okay? The limit is from the state law, and that piece is very clear in the law, okay? So if you've got a property that's 1,200 square feet, they can only have an ADU up to 600 square feet. But if you've got a property at 1,800, it's 900, okay? So it's 50%, and if it's 2,000, it's still 900, okay? The limit is 900 square feet. So the law may be subject to additional restrictions within the municipality, and the law does mention twice that communities are allowed to have site plan review as well as height and yard setbacks, okay? New ADUs must meet the setback requirements. They must comply with Title V as written. Some WRPD restrictions may apply, and bedroom count will also be, has to be Title V compliant with the bedroom count. So they can't add a bedroom, and, if they've got a three-bedroom system, and they add a bedroom with the ADU, then the system has to be changed to meet Title V requirements, has to be changed to a four-bedroom system. The other piece is that this review process is simpler. It's, the turnaround, the applicant submits a hard copy and one electronic copy, and then It takes approximately 3 weeks. Once they complete the application, gets on the planning board agenda, voted that night, and if the requirements have been met, then the board votes yes. Okay? So,
Any cost implications for this?
not that I don't, that never came up, Rick, I'll be honest with you. I think it's just a change in the bylaw. I don't think there was any cost implications.
Are we sure about that?
I'm fairly sure, but I can find out, but
Okay. I would, just as, again, a matter of principle, I would say that if we don't understand the cost and have a firm answer on that, then I think Article 12 was a little bit different because there's is cost, there's also a lot of unknown costs there, and there's a strategy to be held there, but this one, I'm just
Yeah,
not
but, I mean,
crystal clear.
it's not, there's no special permit process, so because there's no special permit process, I mean, that usually requires fees and whatnot for special permits. But I don't think there's any, again, I don't know. if
There's no created burden on
see
the
any-
town or,
No.
okay.
I've dealt with these out on the West
Yeah.
Coast, and it's like putting an addition on, you gotta have your setback requirements and so
Yeah.
forth, so it's,
Yeah,
the only cost is to the
Is to the
developer or the homeowner that's gonna
Yeah.
build it.
As long as they're paying for it, then,
I don't see any cost to the town, if anything, again.
Other than, there could be, increased load in water sewer type of thing, but
right.
we're not talking about thousands of
Again,
people here.
cost to the homeowner, I don't see any.
If, well, my opinion, if the homeowner's paying for it, then. Okay, we want to vote on Article 15?
Yes.
All those in favor say aye.
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 And I have Article
16.
16 as well, which
Yep.
basically, this is just regarding the definition, okay, of the law, and this new definition is to replace and comply with the new state definition that covers both ADUs within a single-family house or with an accessory structure, or within an accessory structure,
Okay,
okay,
so this is just definition
the
here.
definition.
Yeah, okay. All right, any objections to calling a vote?
No. I
All
think
right,
we should go.
all those in vote of Article 16 say aye.
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 And Article 17 is just regarding the table of use. There's some talk that they may pull this. They weren't sure, but we didn't have a lot of discussion around this, so.
If they don't know whether they're pulling it, I'd be in favor of abstaining from it.
Okay.
Any objections to that? We want to vote on that. All those in favor of abstaining from Article 17 on the grounds that we don't have a clear answer whether or not this is going to remain on the list of articles, say aye.
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 Excuse me.
Okay. Article 18, the town vote to amend the code here. Which one is this? Who has this one?
You are,
I
you.
think it might be me. Is it you, Paul, or is it me?
I see Rick on it.
Okay, I'm not sure.
Me?
I have Rick on 18.
Really?
Okay, so I have for some reason, I did talk to them about this. and
Good, good, good. Yeah, because I don't have it on my list from the
So-
email. Okay.
Right now, the way that this is written is that currently, if you apply for a WRPD permit, you have to get a special permit for a ZBA project. It not only goes before the ZBA, it has to go before the planning board. Basically, this article clarifies the language stating that it just needs to go before the ZBA. So that they don't have to go before the planning board. It's just the ZBA.
Okay.
Okay, so it eliminates one step in the process.
Okay. Any objection to voting? All those in favor for Article 18, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Article 19, this is in regards to battery storage, and specifically what it does is it restricts battery storage from going onto water protection resource sites. If I have the the acronym down correctly. So right now, there is no restriction in the town of where battery storage assets can go. And when we're talking battery storage, we're not talking like a, Tesla battery that you would throw inside your garage because you bought an electric car. We're talking about like a very big, large grid supporting battery, right? So, which isn't, which is great and all, but obviously you don't want that in certain places. And if there is a fire or something like that, you don't want to have to put the fire out and then be putting all kinds of chemicals in it that then get into our wetlands and then obviously gets into our water supply, and that's all bad, right? So we don't want to do that. So the planning board picked up on this, that this was, this had not been excluded. And so what they've done through Articles 19, Article 19, speaks to battery storage, saying that they can go in various places, but they cannot go into that WPRD zone. And then the same with Article 20. I'm sorry. Article 20, we'll do all these at once. Article 20 is just the definition of what battery energy storage system is. So it's just it's a definition piece. And then Article 21 is the same thing except for solar installations. So basically saying that not only batteries, but large solar systems cannot be put on these protected areas. My comment on this is a no-brainer. Why wouldn't we do this? This is restricting something that could obviously cause harm to our environment and to our town. And making sure that this bylaw is clarified simply ensures that we're protected legally from any challenges in the future. Any questions or comments? 19, 20, or 21? All those in favor of Articles 19, 20, and 21, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Whose idea was it to put 28 articles? I'm just kidding. I'm jesting.
I understand.
It's a lot.
The idea was it to put in 20
All right.
articles.
Article 22, I remember we discussed this at length too. Any comments or questions? This is where the DPW is trying to get some vehicles.
Yep.
They weren't available. They're just trying to get a slightly different vehicle at similar costs.
Right. That hard time getting
Yep.
them to work.
All those in favor of Article 22, say aye.
Aye.
Article 23, will the town vote to amend the total project cost to upgrade the Plymouth wastewater pump station?
I had that one.
Okay?
I met with Sean Patterson, and he said basically the unanticipated cost of materials has risen through the roof.
Yeah.
And he said in addition, the DPW is doing due diligence in spotting and correcting unanticipated areas of concern along the Plymouth Ave improvements that they're making down there. So, I mean, it's just, they're doing due diligence, they do a great job in maintaining our town, and they only ask for what they need.
Okay.
This is the pumping station, right?
Yeah, that's part of it, but then.
Still going on. I see the construction on that.
And
I guess, on my position on this, I know you guys are involved. I didn't get involved with it. This is one I'd like to abstain on. I just don't see where you get $8 million to put a pumping station in.
Well,
You
then-
haven't been in, you haven't been in.
I've seen the pictures, and I haven't visited it, but I've put in pumping stations. It seems to be a lot of money for that. I mean, it's machinery.
You should go down and see it, but I mean, that's an old building, and there's a lot of, lowlands there, and they just, I think, do an excellent job, and they've also spotted things that they didn't anticipate as they've done the work on Plymouth Ave and the side streets.
I guess, I agree with the project. It has to be done. What I struggle with is the cost of the project.
Is this already under construction? Is that what you said earlier?
Yeah.
Yeah, they've-
So it's kind of like the DPW, you know, they came in and got the 8 million, now they're coming back for what, another?
Well, he just said the unanticipated rise in cost has gone through the roof.
But my point is, and I'm not stopping this, but my point is, I think the 8 million was a heck of a lot of money in the beginning. I mean, it's machinery. $8 million buys a lot of infrastructure, pumps, piping, valves, control systems. $8 million buys a lot of stuff. That's the only way I haven't been involved with it, so I don't feel comfortable voting.
Is there some other, you're trying, so the project though is already underway. There's already monies being spent, correct? So there's construction, there's the proverbial shovels in the ground? Okay.
No,
So,
for quite a while.
so this is, in essence, my understanding, this is more or less a change order. Not a change order, it's a contingency, increased contingency by 4% based upon anticipated rise in costs.
And they find things that have been buried underground, but they never anticipated failing, and they're gonna fix them. So, I mean, you know, they didn't know of the situation till they dug it up. Wow, we gotta fix this, so that they're finding things that they never would have seen until they started this process, and they're fixing them.
So they want to borrow another 900,000?
Yeah.
Is that what
Yeah.
we're looking? It's another 900,000, so.
That's where I agree with Paul, too. I'd love to see some detail for what that 900,000 is. I'm not challenging it. It's a project. The shovels are on the ground. It needs to keep going. I do not want to stop the project for whatever reason, but at the same time, I do think that we have a responsibility to understand what that $900,000 is, other than it's just more contingency. It says based on an increase in scope and work. Do we know? Unless you guys already know what that.
Well, I
increase in
didn't
scope-
get into the detail, but I mean,
So I can actually share some detail. So
Please, sir.
it actually has to do with the electrical relay system. So the electrical relay system, which was installed probably in the 1950s, is at a point where it's failing. So the electrical relay system, the rewiring of that is a cost that was not built into the original scope of the project.
Okay.
And since now they've discovered that they have to increase the contingency to address that relay system, and that's a very expensive component.
Okay.
So my point is, when this project started, we knew this stuff was 1950s.
Yeah.
I've seen this before, that, so that's I just don't feel comfortable. It has to be done, I just don't feel comfortable with the cost. I'd really like to see how that cost is put together. At least the major pieces of equipment. I mean, a $500,000 buys a big pump. You're putting duplex pumps in, there's $1 million. So that's just for the base equipment, valves and whatnot. You know, maybe I should have done more due diligence or asked to get more involved with you guys to look at the plans and see what they're doing. Because that footprint is smaller than this room. And we're putting $8 million worth of equipment in there? And now it's $9 million?
well, until you go down inside the building, and it's an incredible below-ground facility.
But if I was to ask you, in quantity, how many major pieces of equipment are being replaced?
There?
Yeah.
Do you know? I mean, it's an operation there, and it's quite large. That piece, if I'm not mistaken, if it's the electrical component, they talked about the fact that it was hard to get replacements, for some of the equipment, and because of the age. And so that became a challenge as well. I think, do you remember this, Tony? Like
Yeah, it's,
because when was it? 1950s?
50.
I think it's 1950s. So it's,
They've done a good job maintaining it, but I think that, it's probably close to the end of its life.
And I totally agree. I just,
Find out what the cost is.
in my opinion, of my experience, if we're going into a project, I want to know what the whole project's going to be. I don't want to be piecemealed every year for another $1 million, another $1 million, another $1 million. And that just seems like we've seen this before. Where a project comes in, they get a big chunk of money, and then every year we gotta keep adding to it. Oh, COVID, we got supply chain, we got.
When's the project supposed to be complete?
I believe it's going to be complete in June of 2027. And
Oh,
just
wow.
keep in mind, $2.3 million of this project is being financed by county ARPA funds.
By what?
County ARPA funds,
County ARPA funds, okay. That's right.
How much of it?
$2.3 million.
So it's $11.3 million project?
No. The total, what's approved right now is, the total is 8.1. So 2.3 million is being paid by county ARPA.
Out of the 8, okay.
5.8 million is the interim loan from Mass Clean Water. So the ask from DPW to cover the any anticipated overruns or any sort of contingency is an additional 900,000. So the total project authorization would be a total or a cap at $9 million. Doesn't mean we're going to spend all 9 million, but we have the ability to spend up to $9 million
We'll spend it.
in the event.
If it's on the table, it's gonna get spent.
Would it be a big deal if we held off and voted on it, so that way we could converse to get additional information?
We've got 4, we
Well-
might as well make it 5. I mean, if we have
But you got-
questions.
no, I'm not-
Paul has a question, no, I think
My
your question is valid, and I think.
I don't see it, I'm not involved, with it. You guys have been involved with it. Although, in my career, I've done these things,
So,
and it just seems to be a lot of money for this equipment.
so maybe it makes sense if you take a look at it between now and then, too.
I would.
You know, that might help, and
You
maybe
know, but
answer your
wh-
questions, but I still think his point is valid about how much, what exactly does this look like, what exactly the numbers are.
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, it's fair. We have several abstain, actually,
Yeah, 5,
what-
that was number 5.
I thought it was 3. What was,
We
what was
have-
the other one?
We have number 7, number 8, number 9, number 17, and number 23.
Ah, okay. I put 5 yeses because 5 yeses for abstaining. I'm glad you're taking better notes than
That's
I
okay.
am. Okay. All right. Shall we vote to abstain
23?
on 23?
Before we end the conversation.
Yep.
Actually, this was under, how soon I forget, Sean's predecessor,
Tom,
Tom.
Tom Reynolds.
Dave,
Have we ever seen actually a really, a genuine official schedule of values of the project? In other words, demolition, construction, electrical, equipment, line item budget on this?
so we're talking almost a couple of years ago at this point.
I know, that's why I thought it was done, to be honest. But I'd like to ask that question to Sean, and go down and see it this week if I can. I will.
Just call him and make
I'll
an
call him
appointment.
first thing in the morning, and I'd like to see the plans.
I wouldn't mind going if I have
when
time.
we
When
can
would
do
you
it.
go? We'll
I'll call him tomorrow morning. Just so, I know it has to be done, I just like to feel, I just like to get a better feel for it.
All right, so we'll abstain from that. Did we vote to abstain from that? We did, correct?
No, we did vote to. All those in favor abstaining from 23?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Thank you.
Article 24. Who has Article 24?
Oh.
Is this Dawn or Dan?
Oh, this is the,
It's 24, 25, and 26.
I think we talked about this last time. I didn't recall any issues with this. Not just issues, but I recalled that we were actually, this seemed pretty fundamental and okay. This is a postage stamp, basically, that's surrounded by water supply land. So it's to increase the size there. So does anybody have any questions or comments on it?
Actually not. It's pretty straightforward.
You good with it? Seems like it's fine.
Okay. All right. All those, we'll run a vote on Article 24. All those in favor of Article 24 say aye.
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 Okay. Article 25. The town vote to amend the Marshfield Town Code Division 2, by adding bold type, including, basically, this is including the building commissioner in the approval list of town agencies that, or I should say notification and work plans. I don't have any comments or questions on this. Does anybody else? All in favor of Article 25, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, last one. So this is whether or not the town will vote to amend the South Shore Regional Vocational District's regional agreement. Trying to remember, who had this one?
28?
Yeah. Was this Dan?
Jump over 20,
No, well, 26 and 27, we already discussed with the harbor master before
oh,
and
yeah,
voted on it.
okay.
Yeah.
28 is
Yeah, 28 is me. All this is going to do is put this and 9 other communities on a 4-year rolling basis. When this starts, we'll have our first class that are graduated from 9th to 12th. They're on a 3-year basis now.
Okay.
Since we just got in. When this takes effect, we'll have a full 4-year class in there, and us and 9 other communities will just be rolling on a 4-year average versus a 3-year average.
All right. Great. Well, thank you. I don't have any questions. Anybody else have any questions, any comments? All those in favor of Article 28, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right. So we have several abstentions that we have to get back to. We're going to need to meet, I'll send out an email. I agree, it's probably going to need to be, might even be 45 minutes ahead of time, depending upon,
Yeah,
what
do
time's
we-
the town meeting
do we
start,
have
at
to post
6:30 or
that?
7?
Do you have to post, we have to post
Maybe
that, right?
6 o'clock, and it will need to be posted.
Well, you're right.
Okay.
Right.
And maybe we should say 6 o'clock just to be on the safe side. And it will
Yeah.
be. a
Meeting
very-
starts at 7 or 6?
7,
Okay.
7. And it will be very busy, so it's probably just as well.
Yeah.
Because one time I couldn't get in for, it's not good.
Monday, okay.
So can I just verify with everybody what numbers we're abstaining with?
Yep.
Can we tell?
7, 8, 9, 17, and 23.
So 17, I need to find out. It's going to be,
Thank you for sticking around with us. Hope we didn't keep you from dinner for too long. Yeah, I think we probably did. We
Thank
should have snacks or something
Yeah,
at these meetings.
we
I'm
should.
sure the guys over here in the tech booth too are also dying to get some food.
Maybe the rain stopped.
I got to go home and put my little one to bed, so I'm sure that he's waiting patiently for me right now. Okay, thank you very much.
Move to adjourn?
Really appreciate everybody spending
move to
time
adjourn.
tonight. You move to adjourn?
move to adjourn.
Second? Second? All right, we're adjourned.
Done.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
Thank you very much.